Hey everyone, welcome back to Chipstock Investor. I'm Kasey.
And I'm Nick.
We're going to be talking about Monolithic Power Systems, ticker symbol MPWR. And as you'll see on the logo, they refer to themselves as MPS.
We did a video on Monolithic Power, or MPS. Last summer, we called it the Nvidia of power chips. We still feel that way. We'll explain why. We hope the business model makes sense. You can draw the comparison between MPS and Nvidia. And as we've been talking about over on Semiconductor Insider, we're very much still buyers of this stock.
These are the key points that you're going to find in this video. IDM Meltdown. Is Fabless a better business model in power? Monolithic Power's steady engineering expansion into new end markets, and a key risk we're watching in the US-China tariff trade wars.
So we'll launch into it here in just a moment, but just another reminder, if you want to see all of the research that we've done on Monolithic Power and our whole body of work, as well as a list of stocks that we're buying and selling, check out Semiconductor Insider. We've built a great community over there, and we are running a sale right now, a market meltdown sale. Link in the description below.
And a word from the sponsor of today's video, finchat.io. We'll talk a little bit more about this chart that you see right here from Monolithic Power, but we made this chart with the help of our friends from FinChat.
They have a great platform to use to research businesses. We love the business owner mode where you can hide some of the noisy, messy signals and just analyze a company as if you are buying the business. Great tool, great features, and including a lot of cool stuff like this, the ability to chart out and visualize a company's key performance indicators, or KPIs.
You can try FinChat for free, but if you would like some of the pro features, you can check out our discount in the link below. finchat.io/CSI gets you 15% off any paid plan.
Okay, let's start off by talking about our semiconductor industry flow. So we've been talking about IDMs, integrated device manufacturers. Those are companies that both design and manufacture chips. This is the old semiconductor industry business model. Think like Intel, Texas Instruments, Micron, but specifically the auto, industrial, and power IDMs have been under a lot of pressure. It's gotten really expensive to design and manufacture chips these days. So the industry over the decades has specialized and has disaggregated away from the IDM business model. And so we're going to talk about one of those specialists that's not an IDM. It specialized outside of that and became a fabless designer for automotive and power and industrial power. And that is Monolithic Power Systems.
We have a forecast summary from WSTS on the semiconductor industry. And despite the pressure that integrated device manufacturers have, it's still a big market. And at least at this point, there's still a fair amount of growth expected in sensor and various integrated circuits. We have that highlighted in yellow in 2025, 697 billion, and year-over-year growth, 11.2%.
Now, we are expecting at some point, this is probably going to get updated again, though, right? This forecast came out in autumn 2024. And so we expect there's going to be some tariff uncertainty that gets incorporated into this forecast when WSTS does its spring update. It shouldn't be too much longer before that comes out. But let's jump specifically to Monolithic Power, because as it stands right now, they are expected to be a growing business this year in 2025. We'll come back to the tariff point here in just a moment.
This is the enterprise value of Monolithic Power System over the last 20 years. That's how long they've been a public company. They've had a pretty incredible run, but it's been a little bit of a rougher last 3 years. And they had like the worst timed investor day. It was on March 20th and things were looking fairly chipper at that point, but we've obviously had a little bit of upheaval.
Yeah, to say the least. This is from that updated Investor Day presentation at the end of March. What does Monolithic Power do exactly? They now have over 4,000 different products, all sorts of different end markets, but you can see the vast majority of these are either power management or power supply chips, or in some cases, there's also some magnetic sensing, magnetic power chips as well, but highly diversified within this industrial and automotive power segment. And remember, because they're fabless, that means they only engineer and design these chips. They develop IP and they develop total chip systems. So chips that get packaged up a system, integrated onto a circuit board with other chips that have other functionality. And to make this happen, Monolithic Power uses a network of outsourced wafer and chip packaging and testing companies to handle all of that work that they engineer. And so this makes a very lean business model that doesn't have to be preoccupied with buying fab equipment. They don't have to manage the employees working in the fab like their IDM peers. Fabless model, much like Nvidia or AMD.
Here's a revenue chart from Monolithic, and their revenue growth has far exceeded the industry average. On the bottom of the chart, blue is Monolithic Power Systems. The red is the rest of the semiconductor industry, their peers. And yeah, it's been a significant outperformer in comparison to peers.
Yeah, and you mentioned this chart, Kasey. This is just the last 5 years, including the last 3. You showed the enterprise value chart reflecting the stock price performance over the last 3 years. You can see just 2022, 23, and 24 Monolithic, significant growth, and yet the stock has done so poorly. Let's talk about why that is here in just a moment. But here's another look at the revenue. You want to break this down for us?
The red, green, purple are some of their traditional markets: communications, consumer, and industrial. And those specific end markets have not really recovered too much from their 2022 peak sales. But auto has continued to grow. And then 2 new segments, those are the blue and yellow. They pop up in December of 2021. Those 2 segments, enterprise and storage and computing, of course, a lot to do with the supplying of data center server power chips. So what's been the secret to the growth in the last 3 to 5 years, far exceeding that of the traditional IDMs? Well, a lot of IDMs have to worry about expanding their manufacturing footprint, the fab equipment, the employees. Monolithic does not have to worry about. All they have to do is engineer and design new chips.
Yeah, it's a nice luxury being fabless these days, especially when there are a lot of third-party manufacturers popping up, especially in China. I know that's been called out numerous times here as of late as being a key risk because some of those Chinese fabs are backing off on some of their purchases of fab equipment. But the upshot is a company like Monolithic Power can make good use of all that fab space over in East Asia. So at least as of the end of March, when they had their Investor Day update, pre-Liberation Day in the US, Monolithic Power's management team was still pretty optimistic, and they actually increased their revenue, their sales guidance that they had provided at the last quarterly update in early February by about $10 to $20 million. On the right, the updated revenue guidance for Q1 2025, which just ended. We should be getting an update on this here real quick, but you can see the increase there to 630 to 640 million. That implies year-over-year revenue growth of about 39%. And then adjusted operating income, we did a little bit of math. The implication at the midpoint is about 220 million in adjusted operating income, which would represent year-over-year growth of 45%. So as they grow, Monolithic Power is getting that nice simultaneous increase in profit margins, exactly what we want to see as shareholders. However, let's talk about the tariff risk though, because this discussion is definitely not complete addressing this very suddenly very large elephant in the room.
Monolithic Power takes about half of their revenue from China. Their chip packaging and testing specifically comes from China. And so this is from 2024, half of the sales based in China, and that's the location where Monolithic ships its products for final packaging and sale. So we'll talk about why that's important here on this next slide.
Yeah, it's important because this slide kind of paints a different picture. This only says 37% of revenue from China. It seems to be contradictory here, but let's actually go back to the previous slide here really quick. You can see just over half to China, but in the explanation at the top, this is from Monolithic Power's annual report. See how it says in the little explanation above the chart, geographic revenue based on customers shipped to locations. This is when Monolithic Power makes the sale of its chips or modules for final packaging. And this is apparently Monolithic's actual end customer location in this map that they have showing diversification of sales by geography. So this is where things get really tricky, right? Ultimate product, the chips getting packaged up and then tested in China. This is a big risk coming due to the big escalation in the trade war between the US and China yesterday and today, because the Trump administration have excluded tariffs on chips, quote unquote, chips. But what isn't excluded is chips packaged into some sort of device. It could be like a circuit board with a bunch of chips packaged onto it already, or it could be the actual final device, let's say a smartphone. And so that's exactly what would be packaged in China, finally assembled in China, and then shipped back to the US oftentimes. And so Monolithic's management has done some work in diversifying their supply chains already the last couple of years, but they obviously have a lot of work to do, right? So we're going to be looking for some updated commentary on this from CEO and founder Michael Singh and the management team on the next earnings call. We've shown you our supply chain chart here before, and I think it just further illustrates how tricky this situation is, right?
We think about maybe like Taiwan Semiconductor's new wafer manufacturing facility in Arizona. Let's say that the wafer's made in Arizona in the United States, but that wafer is then diced up and shipped and packaged in a different place, like over in Southeast Asia somewhere. And then imagine that this chip now has to go and get tested and installed into that final device somewhere in China, perhaps. So the exception that's made for actual semiconductors doesn't really make not too much difference, really, because the end product is going to be coming from possibly a highly tariffed country.
We're talking about extremely high tax.
Ludicrous tax.
Yeah, go get in line for your smartphone today, kids. Basically, despite these issues, we still obviously have position in Monolithic Power, and one that we continue to nibble and add to in little bits at a time. Despite these issues, the Fabless business model could be a great competitive advantage if other packaging and testing manufacturers develop facilities outside of China. That would really work to Monolithic Power's benefit, as they would obviously at this point be very interested in utilizing those outsourced manufacturers outside of China. IDMs, the traditional business model, might have a trickier time in this new order of higher tariffs, higher tax. If they have a facility stuck in a country with a high tax rate, they're going to have to get a bit more creative in figuring out how to work that out in their supply chain.
All right, that wraps us up for our discussion about monolithic power systems. You can find the full research report over on Discord. You can get access to Discord by the Semiconductor Insider membership. Link in the description below. And as Nick mentioned, we're running a sale, so you can get a 25% off an annual membership.
And we'll, of course, be back next week with more chip stock coverage. We're doing a lot in cybersecurity right now as well, and helping everybody manage the crazy times that we live in. So hang in there, folks. Everything's going to be all right. We'll see you soon.
Take care, everybody. See you soon at Chipstock Investor.